Hello YouTube. This video is about strange brakes in that they don't supply an emergency brake cable, and I'm going to have my wife driving this car. I wanted to save as possible, so I'm going to put emergency brakes in it. Now, unfortunately, in order to put this cable in, what we have to do is disassemble the entire brake system. So here we go. Although this axle comes from Strange, this is a typical Ford backing plate. It has return springs, it has an equalizing bar, it has hold down springs and pins, it has an emergency adjusting cable with underneath the cable comes into the adjusting lever and the return spring for the adjusting lever, and this is the self adjuster. These are the three tools I'll be using to remove and install the brakes. This right here is the Snap-on BT11. It installs springs and removes springs. The vice grip is almost necessary, and this tool is nice to have but not necessary. There's no part number on this tool. So I like to get started on the rear brakes first. There's really no set pattern to take it apart. It's all going to fall apart anyway. This is the BT11, and this end of it removes springs. You put the end of it underneath the spring and on around the pin and just turn it, and it takes the spring off. And we can do that with the front one also. Put the lip underneath the spring, turn it, and the spring comes off. Now we'll take this tool, and I don't know what you call it, but it unfastens the spring so that you can take the shoe off. And now it'll pretty much just fall apart. Like I said, it'll pretty much fall apart. So here's the end of the emergency brake cable, and it goes in this hole right here, along with the spring and the end of the cable, and it snaps into place like that. The end of the emergency cable goes around this detent and the emergency brake cable lever, and then the spring slides down into place and it holds it so that the cable can't come out of that detent. Now what I'm going to do in order to keep this thing from coming out is I'm going to compress this spring a little bit and put a clamp on the far end so it stays clamped. This is the far end of the cable, and what I'm going to do is pull this cable out just a little bit to put some tension on it and tighten this clamp on the cable so it'll keep that spring compressed, and that way the cable can't come off of the arm. As you can see, the cable can't come off the emergency cable lever. I like to start with the back because we have the emergency brake adjuster cable guide on the back, and it makes sense to start there. So we just kind of set this thing in place like so and put the pin in, retaining pin in. And I like to turn the boss on the end so it's horizontal so I know which way it's going. We put the retaining spring on and take this tool that I don't have a part number for. Find the slot, turn it, and we have the rear cable and rear shoe held in place for us to work on. And we'll slide it up here, and we've got the brake cylinder engaged. The next thing I do is I take the emergency brake adjuster cable guide and I put that underneath the return spring, and I put that in the hole in the shoe and that'll hold the guide in place. And now you take the emergency brake cable adjuster and wrap it around the guide and let it dangle there. Take your handy dandy installer tool and put the spring in place. And that'll hold the guide in place for later installation. Now we can put the front together. Now we can put the equalizing bar in with the anti-rattle spring on the front. And this one comes with something I've never seen before, a little plate that slides on. It keeps the spring in line and keeps it lined up on the shoe. So let's see if we can put this together. Okay, we have the shoe in back of the retainer plate, the shoe engaged with the wheel cylinder, the shoe engaged with the equalizing bar with the anti-rattle spring collapsed. Now we can try to put the pin in, the retaining pin. Re-engage everything that we lost up here. So we have anti-rattle spring, sliding guide, equalizing bar, wheel cylinder, and wheel shoe, brake shoe in back of the retainer. We're ready for the return spring. One return spring. It gets hooked into the shoe, and we use our tool. And we have the shoes in place. Now all we got to do is the emergency brake adjuster. This is where the self-adjuster goes, and we slide that into place. Get the adjuster cable, hook it into the adjuster lever, and put the adjuster lever into the brake shoe. Now comes the tricky part. We take the return spring and put that into the front shoe and very carefully grab a hold of it with vice grips. Now everything balanced together, and we put it in the self-adjuster lever. Like so. So now we have the return spring, the self-adjuster lever, and the self-adjusting cable, and the self-adjuster installed. So all we got to do is put the drum on and we're all set. We can adjust up the brakes too. The way I like to adjust brakes is just by taking the drum and sliding it on. If it slides on too easy, then adjust the adjuster up. And try it again. We go a little more. And that's too much. So we'll back it off a little. Okay, and that's too loose. Now we'll get underneath. And use an adjuster spoon to adjust the brake up until I get some drag. And there we go. I don't know if you can hear it, but that's just enough drag. So that's how I do brakes. If you enjoyed the video, there'll be more.